What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the channel. Today I want to revisit the idea that we've discussed in prior Maddens regarding how to match personnel on the defensive side of the ball. But not only that, why it might be advantageous for you guys, at least in the current state of the game, to adapt to using a 4-3 defense as opposed to using a 3-4 defense. Now, I know that in the past I have definitely recommended to you guys to utilize a 3-4 defense, and the reason that I've recommended to utilize the 3-4 defense is because in the past, in Madden 20 especially, I found it to be extraordinarily more useful to stop the run through a 3-4 defense than a 4-3 defense. However, I think that is changing in Madden 21, and I'll tell you guys why in a bit. But I want to talk about, number one, the defense that I have to present to you guys today, and then we're going to hop into practice mode and talk about the basics of matching personnel. And then once that is finished, I do want to point out to you guys what I'm talking about with the differences between the 4-3 and the 3-4 and why it might be advantageous if you're using a 3-4, which I've recommended to you in the past, to switch to a 4-3. So just looking at this defense, you guys should probably be able to tell pretty quickly that this is a very good run stuffing defense, and against most teams I'm effective at stuffing the run. However, against some user teams that know kind of the ins and outs of the game, that know the meta of the game, that run a lot of the effective run plays that are effective in the current state of Madden as it sits today, they are able to tear apart this 3-4 defense. And you would think, looking at this, a 91 run stuffer Cam Hayward, run stuffer Stephon Tuitt, Daniil Hunter, he even has a pretty good run graded an 89. Devin Bush lining up there, Ulysses Gilbert up to superstar, TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith. I mean, this defense is designed to stop the run. That's what I'm trying to do. And it works most of the time. But at the end of the video, I do want to get into why I think I might be switching away from the 3-4, or at least utilize a playbook that has the 4-3 in it. That way, against certain opponents, I have the capability of actually stuffing the run. With that being said, let's go ahead and actually jump into the practice mode, and we're going to take a look at just the basics and talk you guys through, if you guys aren't aware already, of how to utilize personnel to match up best against what the offense is giving you, and put yourself in the most basic advantageous position. Whenever you're calling necessarily incorrect personnel, you don't have the right guys on the field, you could be putting yourself at a disadvantage where you want to be putting yourself at an advantage. So let me go ahead in, and I want to just check my volume settings real quick. And we're just going to turn all of the volume down here just to make sure that there's no song going on that's going to cause us an issue. But with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about the basics of matching up. So let's go ahead and flip sides. Alright, we're going to have to call a random play here in order to get to the flip. We'll just run this one, and then we're going to come out on defense. So first thing that I want to talk about is your base defenses and when to utilize those. Generally speaking, you can guess that on first down, maybe even second down, and probably on short yardage situations, your base defenses are going to be the most advantageous. So first down, I almost always come out in my base 3-4, a 4-3, or some type of heavy formation like a 4-6 or a 5-2 or something of that nature, because those are the formations that are designed to stop the run. Generally speaking, you can predict that your opponent, whether it's the CPU or a user, is going to be more likely to run the ball on first down or run the ball on short yardage situations. Likewise, you will probably see them come out in heavier formations with only 2 wide receivers or many tight ends on the field, or multiple running backs on the field, multiple fullbacks, whatever it might be. You might see them come out in a formation like that, and that is an indication to you guys that you should be running a 3-4 or a 4-3, and you guys will see that on the defensive side of the ball before you choose a play. When the offense defense chooses a play, if you have the feedback on, it's going to tell you what they're going to be coming out in. So, I'm going to hop over to the offensive side here and show you guys some of the formations that I'm talking about. So most of the single back formations, you're going to want to call a heavier formation against these, because they're only going to have 2 wide receivers going out for passes, maybe some tight ends going out for passes, and I think the only single back formation that you might want to consider, bringing out a nickel against it would be like a single back doubles or a single back bunch. These formations have an extra wide receiver on the field. And so the basics of what I'm going through here today is you're going to be matching up pretty much primarily based off of the number of wide receivers, tight ends, and halfbacks that are lining up on the field. Likewise, if they're going to come out on first down and try and spread out your defense or spread out the offense, they're going to come out with something like this, which is going to show 3 wide receivers, a tight end, a halfback, or they could come out with something that shows 4 wide receivers depending on the playbook, or this one comes out with no halfback on the field. So if you don't see a halfback, that's a good general indication that they're coming out in some type of a spread formation, and you need to call a more pass-heavy defensive formation. And that's really important to know, is the basics of, on first down and early downs, for the most part, they're going to be calling heavier formations, so you guys need to call heavier formations. But the more important thing is understanding the difference between what the personnel is giving you from the offensive perspective. And so one of the issues that kind of has become a little bit more prevalent this year is that there are a lot more formations and detailed plays in all of these playbooks that allow for the offense to come out in a passing formation, but the personnel does not necessarily represent a passing formation. So a lot of those formations that I just showed you and scrolled through, a lot of them will have a halfback and a tight end, or maybe 2 tight ends, and those are going to show you, potentially to come out in a heavier formation, but you need to be cognizant of what the down is and what the offense might be trying to do, because a lot of those spread formations now, especially in the Pittsburgh Steelers playbook like I showed you guys, they have tight ends and halfbacks split out wide, and they could be a spread offense, and it could look like the same personnel as a single back formation, and that could be detrimental to your defense if you're coming out in those wrong formations. So the general guidelines to stick with are, on first down and, like I said, short yardage situations, you want to go with a heavier formation, or maybe consider running a nickel formation. On second and third down, you almost always want to be in a nickel formation or something that is even more pass heavy than that. And so you're going to be looking at the nickel, dime, quarter, all of those formations. What I would say from the nickel up is what I would call them, or I guess if you're looking at it physically on the screen here, it would be from the nickel down. These are the types of formations that you want to come out in whenever you sense that it is going to be a passing situation, or you know that the opposing team is going to be passing the ball against you. However, one of the things that you guys need to know is, how to match up properly against those things, because you could come out in a formation that puts your safeties on the field in a formation that's going to put you at risk. And so the dime here is a great example of this. So let's say you're looking for a formation to come out against the opposing team that offers you 4 cornerbacks to match up against a 4 wide receiver set. Well, the dime 2-3-6 will is not that formation, because what you guys will see here is that number 27 lining up on the right side, that is what you would want to be a cornerback if it's a 4 wide receiver set. However, number 27 on the Pittsburgh Steelers is actually the backup safety, Marcus Allen. So that is indicating that my safety is coming down into the box. And so this is why it's important not only to know who's on your team and what numbers they are and things like that, but also know which types of formations actually offer the proper amount of coverage. So the Steelers kind of lack those plays in the playbook that are preventing the safety from coming down into where I don't want them to be. And so as you guys can see in some of these formations, number 27 is showing up a lot, which means that the Steelers run a lot of formations where the safety is coming down into that position where you would want another corner to be. And I don't really have plays in this playbook where a 4th corner comes onto the field. And so that's very important for you guys to know what's going on in your playbook to prevent yourselves from matching up poorly personnel personnel wise, because if you come out against a defense or against an offense that has 4 wide receivers, simply put, the Pittsburgh Steelers playbook is not going to offer you the proper plays to be able to defend that, and that's really important to know. Likewise, you would want to be coming out in something like a quarters formation, which is potentially going to offer you 4 wide receivers to match up against, or 4 corners to match up against their 4 wide receivers. But like I said, generally speaking, 2 wide receivers on the field, you're going to be wanting to come out in a heavier formation like your base defenses or your 4-6s, because those are going to always offer you 2 cornerbacks to match up with their 2 wide receivers out wide. If they come out with 3 wide receivers, you're generally speaking going to want to go with a nickel formation, because that is kind of the base formation with 3 defensive backs, 3 cornerbacks rather, to guard those 3 wide receivers. Now you can obviously mix in different things. Let's say they're coming out in a lot of 3 wide receiver sets and running the ball. You can certainly come out in your base defense, which will help you stop the run. You're just going to be a little bit more susceptible to the pass because you won't be able to run man coverage in a way that will have a corner on every single wide receiver. With that being said, let's say that they're coming out in a 2 wide receiver set and they are still passing the ball all over the place. You could come out in a nickel formation with an extra defensive back to help you in coverage, but let that be known that you will be at more risk to be run against in the running game. You know, it's more easy for them to get a run going against you because you have 1 extra player out of the box, as opposed to your base defense where you have a base of 7 in the box. Whenever you go to a nickel formation, you're subbing out a player from the box and you're going to 6 players in the box. So clearly it becomes more easy for the offense to run. So you need to know how to match those things up and how to match those personnel. Like I said, 2 wide receivers base defense, 3 wide receivers nickel, and then anything above that generally is going to be your 4 wide receiver sets. And, you know, like I said, dime here for the Pittsburgh Steelers playbook. I'm considering transitioning away from the Steelers playbook because it doesn't offer me the plays that I need to cover 4 wide receiver sets or put coverage guys out there where I want them to, because I don't want my safety to be man on man with a wide receiver, and I don't have another formation outside of maybe the prevent where for some reason my safety is still coming into the game that is going to be, you know, causing me to have a bad matchup. But with that being said, I do want to put a little asterisk there that even if you are running a formation like this or a playbook like this with the Pittsburgh Steelers where it's putting the wrong guys in those formations for you, you can certainly go to your formation subs, and I could go into my formation subs and sub out Marcus Allen from that defensive back spot and put an extra corner in there that would potentially help me better in coverage. With that being said, I'm just going with the most basic concepts of stopping the offense by matching up with base personnel. So that's how you're going to match up with base personnel. Like I said, early downs, short yardage, I try to go with heavier formations because those are the plays and downs where it's more likely for the other team to be able to run the ball or want to run the ball. And then likewise with longer distance plays, you want to go nickel and up, and then you can match wide receivers for corners, and the Steelers playbook is actually a pretty bad playbook to use as an example. I apologize for that, but a lot of other playbooks will have like a quarters formation, and that's one of the most ideal formations for actually stopping the pass whenever they're coming out in spread formations and things like that, because it offers that 4th cornerback that's going to be back there and give you the option of manning up across the field if they have many more wide receivers than they're typically coming out in. So that's how you match up personnel, and that's how you put yourself in the right position defensively to stop the offense, and that's how you keep yourself from being at a disadvantage. Because I know a lot of people will call coach suggestions. Nothing wrong with calling coach suggestions. We call coach suggestions in our league, but we have a rule in there that if it's calling the wrong formation for a certain down or a certain situation, you're allowed to go into your formations and select the play that you want. A lot of times your coach suggestions are simply going to call nickel most of the time. I don't know why Madden necessarily calls it that way, probably because nickel is kind of overused in today's NFL, but very rarely do I actually see from coach suggestions my base 3-4 defense, and so people might be wondering, why are they running the ball all over me? Why are they easily running up the middle? Why are they passing on me easily? It's because you're probably calling the wrong formations. And so, if your question is why are they running the ball all over me, it's probably because you're not coming out in heavy enough formations to be able to stop what the offense is doing. If your question is why are they passing the ball ball all over me, it's because you're probably not utilizing the right passing formations on defense to match the right amount of cornerbacks with the right number of wide receivers that they need to cover. You know, even if they came out in a set here looking at just the base 3-3-5 will nickel, if they came out in a formation that had 3 wide receivers and a tight end, I might still struggle to cover that because I have 3 cornerbacks to cover those wide receivers, but my linebackers might not be able to cover that tight end. And so, you know, knowing which formations are going to provide extra defensive backs on the field for you are crucial to be actually being able to stop that. Now, what I wanted to say to kind of cap off this video is a topic that I've, you know, kind of changed my mind on recently based on the way that I've seen things going in the game. It's a lot easier now to run against a 3-4 defense than it has been in the past. And so if you guys have watched any of my Pittsburgh Steelers franchise on the channel, you guys will notice that sometimes when I go up against users like the Titans or the Browns, they tend to run the ball very well against my defense. And this is the point of showing you guys what I was doing on the roster before we actually came in here. Is I wanted to kind of show you guys, you know, what the team actually has to offer, and the fact that this team should theoretically be able to stop just about anything from a defensive perspective because of how good the personnel is. And I don't think I actually have the play that I'm looking for on the offensive side of the ball. So we're just going to actually call just kind of like a base run play. Let's go with concept, counter, trap. This is what I'm looking for. So, well, I guess they only have a 5-6 trap, so we're just going to go with an ISO or something like that. It's a lot easier nowadays to to run against a 3-4 defense. You know, typically speaking, this 3-4 defense, even without any adjustments, would be able to easily stop a run like that. And it's actually kind of telling that on the very first play, they were able to pick up a gain like this, because typically speaking, with a 3-4 defense, you would be able to stop the run here. And you know, yes, my linebackers kind of reacted poorly here. They got sucked in to the motion of the fullback, and the halfback was able to cut back. But my defensive players here, and I showed you guys before I came in, are way better than the offensive players. And yes, I could have pinched the D-line or something like that, but I'm talking about running this defense without any adjustments. Prior to Madden 21, you would have been able to run this defense without any adjustments, and it would have pretty easily been able to stop any running play and prevented them from getting any type of yardage like this. You know, at the most, they would have gotten like 5 yards on a run play like that, because you just simply have the right personnel in a 3-4 defense to stop that. However, they've changed the way things are coded here in the game and the way things actually work in this game. Nowadays, the way things work is the more players you have on the line of scrimmage, the less likely you are to actually be able to stop a run, because these guys get simply eaten up. I mean, you're talking about guys that are fantastic block shedders, like Danielle Hunter right now. These guys are all on double teams, so it's no surprise. But I have 2 linebackers back here that are also going to get fooled by this play and get eaten up in the run game. They changed the way things work here. And so imagine from a defensive perspective, if I had a third linebacker sitting back on this defense. Imagine if I had a third linebacker right here in a 4-3 scheme and just take one of the outside linebackers off the field. That third linebacker would have adjusted and simply filled this hole. Basically what I'm getting at here is that it's actually sometimes easier to stop the run with more guys off of the line of scrimmage than it is with more guys on the line of scrimmage. The way that they've changed the game does not necessarily mean that calling a heavier formation or calling a formation with a ton of guys on the front is actually going to guarantee you the ability to stop the run. Calling a 4-6 formation, for example, doesn't necessarily give you a better chance at actually stopping the run than it did in the past, because players that are on the line of scrimmage get eaten up so easily, even if they're really good run blockers or good run stuffers. And so this is why I get into the argument of why I might try to talk you guys into switching away from the 3-4 to the 4-3, because in the 3-4, obviously you're going to have 7 guys in the box. Like you would with the 4-3, you're going to have 7 guys on the box. And excuse me, I need to get a drink real quick. So either way, you're going to have 7 guys in the box. But the difference between the 3-4 and the 4-3 is that in the 4-3 you have an extra guy roaming, you have an extra guy moving around, which creates difficulties for the offensive line to block. As you guys saw on that last play, it was so easy, and I know that it's a heavy formation on the offensive side of the ball, but it was so easy for them to pick up every single player, and all they had to do was get the linebackers slightly out of position, and they got a huge gain with Anthony McFarland, pretty much untouched for 10 yards. With a 4-3 defense, it is much more difficult because of the fact that the linemen are coded to do double teams and things like this. It's much more difficult to block an extra linebacker that is off the line of scrimmage. So let's say we had an extra linebacker right here. This linebacker would probably not get touched by any of these offensive linemen. Number 75, the left guard, would probably break off and attempt to block a linebacker if there was a third linebacker here. But it is much more difficult for him to do that than it is for him to just simply engage on this double team here. And so this just kind of showcases the point that I'm trying to say, that it is less advantageous nowadays to have more players on the line of scrimmage. And that's just a problem in the way that Madden is coded. That shouldn't be the way that it works. Having more players on the line of scrimmage is how you stop the run game. Having more players in the box is how you stop the run game in real life. Teams that have many good defensive linemen that they can put on the front 5, basically, that can put in the front 7, teams that have those types of players are more effective at stopping the run. You look at the Buffalo Bills. Oftentimes they run 5-2 types of formations because they have 5 guys that they can stand up like this. And essentially this is why I like the 3-4, is because, you know, the 3-4 is basically a 5-2 in a sense, because you have all 5 guys on the line of scrimmage and then 2 linebackers back to roam and make the tackles. Well, these types of formations just simply don't work the same way that they used to. In addition to that, these formations aren't very good against the meta right now, which is trap plays. Trap plays are like the play to run on the offensive side of the ball if you want to pick up yards in the running game. Now, with that being said, you can certainly pinch your defensive lineman and then crash to the center, and those 2 adjustments will prevent teams from running the ball up the middle, but then you're sacrificing edge runs, you're sacrificing easy gains across the tackles, essentially. Yeah, you can commit to stop the trap play, but that puts you way out of position with a 3-4 defense, because you're going to be bringing 3 players in and creating huge holes on the outside. And so from a balance perspective, in addition to that, without having to make a ton of adjustments, it's just simply more effective to run a 4-3 defense this year to stop the run, I think. And, you know, honestly, the advantage of running a 3-4 defense, in my personal opinion, in Madden for the longest time, has been the ability to stop the run with it. Well, if they've taken away the ability to stop the run with the 3-4 defense, then what's left? The advantage of the 4-3 defense is having 3 linebackers that are already back in position to cover. So there's no advantage to running a 3-4 defense anymore. I would say, unfortunately, as much as I like to run the 3-4 defense, and I've loved it in past Maddens, the advantage is to run a 4-3 defense on both sides. You get better run stuffing, and you get better pass coverage. So personally speaking, I would recommend that you guys, you know, switch away from a 3-4 to a 4-3, because just in the current state of the game, it seems like that's what's going to be more effective. You know, I'm not complaining about that. I just think that the 3-4 should be more viable as a run stuffing mechanic, and it just simply isn't. So I wanted to let you guys know that from my experience and what I'm seeing, it's more advantageous to run a 4-3. And if you guys want to see evidence of that, go watch the game that I played against the Browns. I believe I have the link to it up on my community page. Go watch that game. I mean, he's able to very easily manhandle my defensive line by just simply running, you know, trap plays and things like that, and running up the middle against my 3-4 defense, whereas I have way better defensive linemen than he has offensive linemen, and then I couldn't stop the run against him, and I have way better, or rather, I couldn't stop the run, and he was able to stop the run, and he was running a 4-3. So I have better offensive linemen than he has defensive linemen. I have better defensive linemen than he has offensive linemen. I should have been winning both battles in the trench, and instead I was losing both battles. And very simply put, it's because I was running a 3-4 defense, and he was running a 4-3. So hopefully this information helps you guys out. Hopefully you guys find it useful. If you do, make sure you leave a like on the video and comment down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. I'll see you guys in the next video. I hope you guys have a good night.